Welcome to Culture Screen, where we analyze culture through countdown. Goosebumps is a children's horror book series published by Scholastic Corporation. The series was written and created by R.L. Stine. Goosebumps is the second best-selling book series of all time and has sold over 400 million books around the world. If you grew up in the 90s, you probably remember seeing these books at school for the first time, especially during the school book fairs. Here I will discuss the top 5 Goosebumps books. Number 5. The Haunted Mask. The Haunted Mask was published on September 3rd, 1993 and was the 11th book in the series. We are introduced to Carly Beth Caldwell, who is the protagonist. She is talking to Sabrina Mason, her best friend, about Halloween. Carly is introduced as a shy and overly gullible girl. Chuck Green and Steve Boswell are two kids that bully Carly repeatedly. They also call her names and take pride in torturing Carly at school. At one point, Chuck and Steve place a worm inside a sandwich and trick Carly into eating it. Afterwards, Carly runs home and swears revenge against Chuck and Steve for what they did to her. When she arrives home, she finds that her mother has sculpted a mask that looks exactly like her as a symbol of her love for Carly. Carly is upset because she also finds out her mother has made a duck costume for Halloween for her. She is tired of being considered a joke at school. As Carly goes into her bedroom, she is frightened by her little brother Noah as he is dressed in her costume. She calls Sabrina and talks about the horrible prank played on her and how she would never fall for another prank of theirs. Carly goes to a shop where the shopkeeper warns Carly about the mysterious mask she likes. Carly insists on buying the mask and forces the sale by taking the mask and tossing the money at the shopkeeper. As soon as Carly gets home, she tries on the mask and it scares her brother. They are shocked at how it changes her voice against her will. After taking it off, she goes to try it on a second time. In the second attempt, she feels the mask almost sucked itself onto her face. She grabs the mask her mother made for her and sets out to scare her bullies, Steve and Chuck. Her behavior begins to change almost immediately. She vandalizes the neighborhood, attacks her best friend Sabrina, and scares the younger kids in the community. After scaring Steve and Chuck, Carly drops the mask made by her mom. When she becomes petrified at how the mask scared Steve and Chuck for her, she runs to Sabrina's house and tries to remove the mask again. They find that the mask has completely fused to Carly's face and cannot come off. They go to the shopkeeper where Carly originally bought the mask. The shopkeeper tells them that the mask is a living face created by him. It belongs to a set of masks called the Unloved Ones. The shopkeeper instructs Carly that the only way to remove the unloved mask is to find a symbol of love. As Carly begins to cry, her tears awaken the other unloved masks that begin chasing Carly down the street. Carly remembers that her mother's mask is a symbol of love. She finds the mask her mother made and uses it to fight off the unloved masks. After she is able to remove the unloved mask from her face, she runs home and hugs her mom when her little brother walks over from the next room wearing her mask and asks how he looks. Number 4. One Day at Horrorland. One Day at Horrorland was published on February 1994 and was the 16th book in the series. The book cover depicts a horror monster attached to a billboard that reads "Welcome to Horrorland, where nightmares come to life." In the beginning, we are introduced to the Morris family as they are driving around the desert looking for the Zoo Gardens theme park. The Morris family consists of Lizzie, Luke, Luke's friend Clay, and their parents. The family remain lost and find another advertisement for a nearby theme park about a mile away called Horrorland. As they arrive to Horrorland, they park their car and it immediately explodes, but they all narrowly escape their death. They are then greeted by an employee who allows them to enter the park for free as a courtesy for their car exploding in their parking lot. The parents look for a phone to call for a replacement car, but the employee makes them aware there are no phones in Horrorland. The parents allow their kids to go on the rides while they figure out how they can get another car. The kids walk into a sign that reads "No pinching" after escaping escaping a robotic wolf. The kids choose the Deadly Doom Slide as their first ride. The Deadly Doom Slide has 10 numbered slides, and one of them is the never-ending Doom Slide. The workers warned them about earlier. Lizzie chooses slide number 3, her lucky number. Luke chooses number 2, and Clay, Luke's friend, chooses number 10. After Lizzie and Luke finish their rides, they can't find Clay. When they ask the employees where Clay could be, they remind them that perhaps Clay chose the never-ending Doom Slide. Lizzie decides they should take slide number 10 in order to end up wherever Clay is. Turned out, slide number 10 ends in a flaming wall. When they go looking for their parents, they realize that they have also gone missing. After searching, they find their parents and go on the easiest ride called Coffin Cruise. As they jump in the coffins, they are locked inside with spiders, and when they finally manage to escape, they are led to a sign that reads "No exit. Nobody leaves Horrorland alive." Shortly afterwards, they are captured by the workers at Horrorland. The monsters put them on a game show where they air humans being tortured and or killed on television as a form of entertainment. As they are playing the game, when they are about to be pushed into a pit of death, Lizzie remembers the no pinching signs posted around the park. Lizzie then pinches the monster, and it causes the horror to shrink and die. The family starts pinching all of the horrors, and the horrors chase them as they escape from Horrorland. They steal a nearby bus and drive home. Once they arrive home, however, they find that a horror had arrived home with them by holding on to the back of the bus. The horror then gives them free passes to Horrorland for the year. Number 3. The Girl Who Cried Monster. The Girl Who Cried Monster was published on May 1994 and was the 8th book in the series. On the book's cover art, we see Lucy Dark looking into Mr. Mortman as he is about to eat a fly. In the beginning, we are introduced to Lucy Dark. She is a 12-year-old and lives in Timberland Falls. Lucy loves scaring her younger brother Randy by reading scary monster stories to him. We learn that Lucy is obsessed with reading horror stories. The librarian, Mr. Mortman, tries convincing Lucy that she should try reading classic literature books instead, but Lucy is not interested. After leaving the library one day, Lucy forgets her rollerblades and returns to pick them up. Lucy goes into the library and sees Mr. Mortman through his office window when he pulls out a container full of flies he originally uses to feed his pet turtles. Suddenly, Mr. Morton's head swells up and he transforms into a monster. He grows claws and his mouth turns into a long row of teeth. After he has transformed into a monster, when Lucy tries to enter into the library again, she notices the library has been locked and she runs home to explain to her parents that Mr. Mortman is a monster, but no one believes her. 1 week later, Lucy returns to the library hoping to catch Mr. Mortman transforming again. She hides at the library after it closes, and after waiting a while, Lucy doubts what she previously saw and thinks she might have been hallucinating. But just as she is done thinking this, she witnesses Mr. Mortman transform yet again. This time, Mr. Mortman not only eats some of his flies again, but he eats one of his own turtles. On the way home, Lucy bumps into her friend Aaron Messer. She tries to convince Aaron that Mr. Mortman is a monster, but he won't believe either. Lucy also tries to convince Randy when she gets home and he doesn't believe her. They hear a knock at the door, and when Lucy opens the door, it is Mr. Mortman. As soon as Lucy's mother arrives home, Mr. Mortman claims he came to Lucy's home to return her backpack and leaves immediately. Lucy takes a camera to spy on Mr. Mortman. When Lucy takes a picture of Mr. Mortman, the flash of the camera makes him aware of Lucy's presence, and the monster begins chasing Lucy around the library. She manages to escape again. When Lucy develops the photo, she hopes that it will provide her with the proof she needs to prove Mr. Mortman is a monster. The photo, however, only shows an empty desk in the photo. Lucy is determined and refuses to give up. She creates a new plan of investigating Mr. Mortman at his own house instead of at the library. Accompanied by Aaron, Lucy goes to Mr. Mortman's house when she sees him eating snails, raw fish, and eels. Mr. Mortman sees Lucy and Aaron flee, and he later asks them why they were on his property, to which Lucy responds that she simply wanted to tell him she wouldn't be attending attending his reading program anymore. Lucy's parents won't allow her to stop attending the program, however. The next morning, she is forced to attend the library program. When Lucy arrives, Mr. Mortman locks the doors and tells her that she won't be allowed to leave. Lucy finds a way to escape and she runs home. Aaron tells Lucy that he saw Mr. Mortman transform into a monster and that he believes Lucy now. He apologizes for his disbelief. When Lucy tells her parents about Mr. Mortman again, they decide to invite him over for dinner. When at the dinner, Mr. Mortman asks what they will be eating. Lucy's parents answer by saying that they plan on eating him for dinner. Lucy's parents explain that they don't want any more monsters moving into their neighborhood, and they eat Mr. Mortman alive. We also find out that Lucy and Randy are also monsters, but their fangs haven't grown completely yet. Lucy's family does not want too many monsters to come to the community because then they will scare the regular citizens and get chased out of town. In the end, Lucy is telling Randy yet another scary story. Her mother hears her and tells her to stop telling monster stories. Number 2, Say Cheese and Die. Say Cheese and Die was published on November 1992 and was the 4th book in the original series. The book's cover art depicts a family of skeletons having a picnic. In the beginning, we are introduced to 4 friends, Greg Banks, Shari Walker, Doug Arthur, and Michael Warner, who live in Pitt's Landing. They are bored and thinking about what to do. After deliberating, they choose to sneak into the Kauffman House, an old home in a state of disrepair that is haunted and home to a man named Spidey. While he was exploring the basement, Greg Banks finds a hidden camera inside a compartment in a wall. Greg, who is interested in photography, picks up the camera and asks Michael to pose for a quick picture. Michael leans up against a staircase railing, and when Greg takes the picture, the camera makes a weird sound and a photo ejects out of the camera. When Michael leans against the railing as well to see the picture, the railing breaks, causing Michael to fall to the ground and hurt his ankle. When Spidey enters the basement, the kids get scared and exit through the back exit. Greg takes Michael's photo and the camera. When the group stops running from the house, they look at the photo and are surprised to see that they see a photo of Michael falling from the railing instead of a photo of him leaning against the railing. Later that same day, Greg shoots more pictures with the camera and takes a photo of his dad's new car, but the picture comes back showing a wrecked vehicle. When Greg takes a picture of his older brother Terry, the picture returns an image of Terry worried on a baseball field. A few days later, Greg, Sherry, and Michael go to a baseball game where Doug is playing. Greg takes a picture that shows his friend Doug laid out on the ground with his neck bent at a slight angle. Doug refuses to believe something bad will happen to him and assumes the camera is broken. Moments later, a baseball hits Doug and he falls to the ground and his neck bends to an unnatural angle, just like in the photo seen earlier. At this point, Greg is convinced that the camera is causing these things to happen. Suddenly, Terry tells Greg that their dad has just been in an accident and the car has been wrecked. That same night, Greg has a nightmare of him taking a photo of his family at a barbecue. The photo shows his entire family as living skeletons. Sherry is still skeptical of the camera and asks Greg to bring it to her birthday party. Greg refuses and eventually brings the camera to her party. At the party, Greg takes a picture of Sherry, and when it ejects from the camera, the photo doesn't show her on the photo at all. Shortly thereafter, Sherry disappears without a trace. A couple of days later, Greg and Bird begin fighting over the camera when finally Bird takes a photo of Greg and in return showing Greg and Sherry being chased by a shadow. They are happy because they see Sherry as alive in the photo. Greg rips the picture of him and Sherry and she reappears, but she does not remember where she has been since her birthday party. While the kids are talking, Spidey shows up and starts chasing them in a similar scenario to that of the photo Greg had ripped up earlier. When a neighbor threatens to call the police, Spidey flees. Later on, the kids choose to return the camera to where they found it. They go to the hiding place inside the Kauffman house. When Greg and Sherry enter the house, Spidey finds them and tells them about the camera's origins. Spidey reveals that his real name is Dr. Fritz Fredericks, and he is a mad scientist. His lab partner was the original creator of the camera, but Spidey stole it and presented the camera as his own invention due to his uncontrolled greed. Spidey did not know, however, that his lab partner was a master of the dark arts and that his partner had placed a curse curse on the camera so that whenever the photo is taken, something bad will happen to the person or thing in the photo. Spidey goes on to tell them that the camera caused the death of all his friends and family and has been trying to hide it. Spidey also reveals to them that because they now know his secret, they must remain in his house forever. As Greg and Sherry struggle to escape, they take a picture of Spidey and he dies petrified just like the photo depicted. Greg and Sherry drop off the camera where they found it and run to the police and tell them about where Spidey is. In the last scene, we see the two bullies, Joey and Mikey, were able to follow the protagonists and they end up picking the camera afterwards. They take their own photos, and as they wait for the photos to develop, the screen cuts to black. Number 1. Night of the Living Dummy. Night of the Living Dummy was published on November 1995 and is the 7th book in the original series. The book's cover art depicts Slappy the dummy staring directly out of the book and into the reader's eyes. In the beginning of the book, Lindy and Chris Powell are walking when the two girls stop to investigate a home being built in their community. As Lindy is searching through garbage containers, she finds a wooden ventriloquist dummy and names it Slappy. Lindy begins using her dummy to gain popularity and people begin paying her to perform at birthday parties. This growth sparks jealousy in Chris, especially after one altercation where Slappy slaps her in the face. Chris later receives a puppet as a gift from Mr. Powell. Chris names her puppet Mr. Wood when suddenly strange events begin to occur. At one point, Lindy is helping Chris improve her ventriloquist act when Mr. Wood starts belittling Chris. At this point, Chris thinks the insults are coming from Lindy, but Lindy admits that she is not in control of the puppet. That same night, Lindy and Chris find Mr. Wood choking Slappy to death. The puppets make a mess around the house, and the mother asks Lindy and Chris about it and threatens to take the puppets away from them if they continue making up stories about the puppets. Lindy later reveals to Chris that all of these events that have happened were part of a huge prank she designed to fool Chris. Lindy was tired of being copied by Chris. A few days later, Chris finds a small note in Mr. Wood's pocket. Chris reads the note out loud and Mr. Woods becomes alive. That same night, the Powells have visitors over and Lindy and Chris's parents ask them to put on a ventriloquist show for them as a way of entertaining their guests. Lindy goes first and does a great job, but even before Chris goes on, Mr. Wood starts hurling insults at the elderly couple, Mr. and Mrs. Miller, who are visiting the Powells. Mr. Wood insults the Millers by commenting on their appearance and insults their teacher, Mrs. Berman, for being overweight. Due to this, Chris's mom punishes Chris by grounding her. Chris discovers Mr. Wood is actually alive when she decides to look into some noise around the house. Mr. Wood informs Chris that she and her sister Lindy are now his slaves, and that after those words left in his coat pocket were read out loud, he became alive. The girls later try decapitating the puppet, but they are unable to harm him. They eventually trap Mr. Wood in a suitcase and bury the suitcase in their backyard. The next morning, when they wake up, Mr. Wood managed to escape. Mr. Wood chases after the two girls and walks directly into an oncoming steamroller that was being used in the nearby construction site. Mr. Wood is instantly crushed and a strange green mist rises out of the puppet pieces. When Lindy and Chris return home to their room, they see Slappy again and he asks the two girls if Mr. Wood is finally gone.
We upload new videos every week, so subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to hit the like button as well. Click the notification bell to be notified of when we upload these videos. See you on the next episode of Culture Screen.